Under the morning sun, a towering building of glass and steel gleamed. Cold, perfect, a symbol of immense power. This was Goldman and Pierce Industries. Inside, the click-clack of polished shoes on marble floors was the only sound as employees hurried past a man in a faded blue uniform. No one said hello. No one even spared him a glance. His name was Walter, and for 5 years, he had been the invisible janitor. Every morning, he'd arrive before dawn, pushing his mop and humming a soft tune under the harsh fluorescent lights. To the ambitious people rushing by, he was just part of the scenery, a background extra in their corporate drama. "Watch your bucket, old man," a young intern once snapped, annoyed that a drop of water had landed near his expensive shoes. Walter just smiled, gave a gentle nod, and quietly moved his bucket. He never argued, never complained. But there was a strange grace in his movements, a sense of purpose that seemed out of place for someone who was just cleaning floors. He always took a long pause before entering the executive floor, as if the air up there held forgotten memories. "You're wasting your time up there," another janitor had told him once. "Those people won't even thank you." Walter simply replied, "Some places just need more cleaning than others." That day, like every other, he started by polishing the brass nameplate on the CEO's door. Richard Pierce, founder and CEO. He traced the letters with his fingers, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Down the hall, employees laughed, their conversations filled with talk of bonuses, promotions, and weekend getaways. None of them noticed Walter as he knelt down to fix a loose floor tile with his own hands. At lunch, while everyone else gathered in the bustling cafeteria, Walter sat alone near the service elevator, unwrapping a simple sandwich from a brown paper bag. People actively avoided his corner, afraid of being seen with the janitor. "Can you believe he's still here?" someone whispered. "He's like part of the furniture." Walter heard them, and a faint smile touched his lips. He'd heard worse. Later that afternoon, he stopped by a framed photograph hanging in the hallway. It was a picture of the original Goldman and Pierce team, taken over 40 years ago. His eyes lingered on one particular face among the founders, a younger, prouder version of himself, standing right next to Richard Pierce. But the photo was covered in a thin layer of dust, and no one had ever bothered to look closely enough to see the resemblance. Walter gently wiped the frame, restoring its shine, and then moved on. That night, long after the last employee had gone home, he walked through the silent halls like a man visiting old ghosts. He ran his hand over the mahogany table in the boardroom, the very one he had helped choose all those years ago. "You've changed, Richard," he whispered into the darkness. The next morning, chaos erupted on the top floor. The CEO was making a surprise visit. Managers scurried about, frantically tidying papers, yelling at their assistants, and nervously adjusting their ties. "Everything must be spotless, people," barked Mr. Clarkson, the head of operations. "This company runs on image," someone added, "and make sure the janitors are out of sight." Walter overheard but said nothing. He just kept polishing the floor, right outside the CEO's office. The elevator doors opened, and the powerful Richard Pierce stepped out, older now, with a stern expression flanked by his top executives. Everyone stood a little straighter, feigning confidence. "Good morning, Mr. Pierce," they chorused in unison. Walter quietly moved aside with his mop. The CEO's eyes swept across the hall, then suddenly froze. "Walter?" he said, his voice cutting through the strained silence. The entire room fell quiet. Every head turned towards the janitor. Walter looked up slowly. "Good morning, Richard." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. The janitor just called the CEO by his first name. Do you know him, sir?" Clarkson stammered, his face pale. Pierce took a step forward, his voice filled with disbelief. "Know him. He built this company with me." Gasps echoed through the corridor. "Before there were glass walls and fancy offices," Pierce continued, his voice rising, "it was just me, him, and 2 desks in a rented basement." A junior executive, completely bewildered, asked, "But what happened?" Pierce turned to Walter. "That's what I'd like to know." Walter offered a faint smile, his eyes soft but weary. Life happened, Richard. The CEO's brow furrowed. You disappeared 30 years ago. We thought you'd retired. I did, Walter said. But I missed this place, so I came back, not as a boss, but as someone who could see it from the ground up. The executives were frozen in shock. Walter's voice grew steadier. And do you know what I found, Richard? The company we dreamed of, it lost its heart somewhere along the way. A flash of guilt crossed Pierce's face. You used to greet everyone by name, Walter said quietly. Now, people walk past each other like ghosts. You used to believe that people mattered more than profits. The silence in the hall was deafening. Finally, Walter set his mop aside. I didn't come back to embarrass anyone. I just wanted to remind this place what it was built on. The CEO stepped forward, emotion trembling in his voice. You reminded me, old friend. He turned to his stunned employees. Everyone, this man, Walter Harris, is the reason this company exists. He was my partner, my brother in vision. The atmosphere in the room completely shifted. The janitor, everyone had ignored, suddenly seemed to stand taller than any executive there. Clarkson swallowed hard. Sir, I had no idea. Walter smiled kindly. That's the problem, son. None of you ever ask who people are before you judge them. Pierce turned to Walter again. Come back, Walter. Rejoin the board. We need you. But Walter gently shook his head. No. My time in the boardroom is done. I belong here, where I can still make things shine. You mean, as a janitor? Pierce asked, confused. As a reminder, Walter corrected him. A reminder that even the smallest hands can hold the biggest stories. The CEO's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Then let's make one promise. This company will never forget you again. The crowd began to applaud, softly at first, then with growing conviction, until the whole corridor echoed with thunderous applause. For the first time in years, Walter's smile truly reached his eyes. The story went viral. Former co-founder returns as janitor to teach company a lesson in humanity, the headlines blared. In a televised interview, a journalist asked him, "Why did you come back as a janitor?" Walter chuckled. Because titles fade, but purpose doesn't. The interviewer pressed, "And what lesson do you want people to learn?" Walter A.'s response was simple. That success means nothing if you forget how to look people in the eye. That clip was shared thousands of times, inspiring a wave of change. Inside Goldman and Pierce, executives started greeting the cleaning staff by name. The social barriers in the cafeteria crumbled as people from all departments began sitting together. They even placed a portrait of Walter in the main lobby, right next to the company's founding plaque. Underneath it, a simple quote, "Greatness starts from the ground up." On his last day, Walter walked through the halls one final time. As he passed, employees stood up, not out of pity, but out of genuine respect. Pierce walked beside him in comfortable silence. "You really changed everything again, Walter," the CEO said. Walter smiled. "No, Richard, you did. I just cleaned the mirror." They both laughed, a sound that echoed through the halls like old times. As Walter reached the front door, he looked back at his reflection in the glass walls. It was a company reborn, not necessarily richer, but infinitely more human. He whispered to himself, "Now that's worth shining." He stepped out into the sunlight. A young intern, the same one who had snapped at him weeks ago, approached him shyly. "Mr. Harris, thank you." Walter smiled warmly. "Just call me Walter." The boy grinned. "You made me want to do more than just climb the ladder." Walter patted his shoulder. "Then start by lifting someone else up." And with that, he walked down the street, disappearing into the morning light, the invisible man who reminded the world what truly matters. Thanks for watching, everyone. If this story moved you, please give it a like and subscribe for more content that inspires. See you next time.